Hello everybody, my name is Robert Wood. I'm the lead smith at Serendipity Forge, and for a lot of you folks out there, this is the first time you'll get to see this ugly face. And well, our very first YouTube video. Not really something I ever thought about doing, but I've had a lot of people over the years try to get me to go on a certain TV show, and I'm really not interested in that kind of thing. So I guess the next best thing that folks asked for was to do a YouTube video, and that's what we're going to do. Probably going to do a little series, hopefully. Most everybody out there that is going to watch this video to start with is familiar with my work on Facebook. I do mainly knife work, mainly knife making, because that's what pays the bills right now. But when I started this journey, that wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to do more artistic smithing, candlesticks, wall sconces, bird feeder hangers, hinges, household things. And occasionally I still do. But everybody had to start somewhere. And as we were trying to think of how to do a first YouTube video, one of our friends suggested starting at the beginning. So that's what we're going to do. Now, I can't quite go back 40 years to when I was a little kid and sneaking out to the garage to play with Daddy's welder and acetylene torch when I didn't think he knew it. But I can go back to my very first forge. And we're going to go back and stumble through the same process that I did, with the same tools that I did. Nothing fancy, just plain old stuff that I had laying around years ago when I first started. Back then I started because my kids saw some blacksmiths at the fair and they wanted to try it. So this is how I tried it. So here we are outside, and you can see my little forge that I've dug. It's probably about 4 inches deep. You can see I've just got an old piece of scrap pipe with a Coke bottle taped on. Regular old hammer, nothing to it. Just an old ragged hammer. A pair of vice grips. Most everybody's got a pair of those laying around. Any pliers will do. And then the stolen hair dryer. Now that's going to be my air supply for my forge. And you'll notice that I have the cool button taped down. That's just to keep from overheating the plastic. There's my little anvil set up. And let's get this fire started. Little paper. A few little sticks for kindling. Light it up. Oh. You'd think a reasonably smart fellow would have thought about which way the wind was blowing when he started this, but I guess I'm not a very reasonably smart fellow. And of course it is very wet here. Everything is very wet. A long time ago when I started forging, it was summertime, so this was much easier to get going because everything was dry. Now the ground's wet, the wood's wet, everything is wet. But that's okay. We'll fiddle around. We'll fiddle around and get it going eventually. It's starting to catch. Maybe a few more sticks. And if you'll watch as I add, you'll notice when I turn the air up, when the air is turned up. There we go. It's catching good now. Feed a little oxygen to that fire. Now I do my regular forging with coal. But in the beginning I didn't have coal. So I started off with just little chunks of wood I picked up out of the wood. And there's our starting stock, just a little piece of 5/16 round. I believe originally I had a little piece of scrap that I found somewhere, and that's what I started out with. Add a few more sticks and keep the air to it. Now I'll be fast forwarding through bits of this video, especially the longer bits where we just have to wait and wait and wait to get a bed of coals going and get the fire to where it can be used. And there's the smoke again. That was rough. That's why my eyes are red and swollen in the intro and outro to this video. It's not because I've been smoking funny cigarettes, it's because a certain knucklehead didn't think about the wind direction when they set this up. By the way, my off-camera videographer is my daughter, Emma. She's 13. She helps out sometimes, especially with the leather work. And she loves being on the back side of the camera. I don't think I could get her in the front side of the camera if I beat her with a stick. But she'll stand behind it all day long. There, I'll just move the anvil around to the other side. Now that anvil, when we get a better shot of it, you'll notice it's just a scrap piece of steel nailed to a stump with a piece of pipe nailed to a stump, and that's how I started off. I did blacksmithing for years before I got a proper anvil. The main thing starting out is to start out. A lot of folks think they've got to collect tools before they can start. Other folks think they've got to watch YouTube videos or read books or do this or do that before they can start. Hey, I didn't have any special education. I just started, and that's the only way you can learn to do something, is you just got to do it. And I'm going to struggle a bit in this video, but that's okay. It's nothing compared to the struggle that I had the first time I ever did this. And the fire's starting to get a little warm. Still very wet. Hard to get a bed of coals going. As a matter of fact, there'll come a point here in the future where I just forget about it. Dump a little bucket of coal on there and get it going with coal. Now, I didn't do that because it's not possible to forge with wood. I used to forge with wood and lump charcoal from the Walmart all the time. But it does take a bit of time to get a bed of coals going, especially when it's damp. And since I didn't want to bore everybody to death, there will come that point in the video where things change, big puff of smoke, and you'll see after the coal's gone. And it looks like we're finally starting to get a little color in the steel. Maybe we're finally starting to dry out some of that good North Carolina clay. Finally starting to get a bed of coals from that wet wood. Maybe we'll finally get some forging done. Oh yeah, here we go. I'm starting on this little project by drawing a point on that piece of 5/16. Now as I'm drawing the point, I'm turning the stock 90 degrees, keeping the stock parallel and making a square point on that piece of steel. Very important, anytime you're forging a point on a piece of round stock, you keep that point square. If you try to forge it round, it'll just end up splitting. But it wasn't very long after that I decided we had to do something different because this video was taking entirely too long. And there we go. As if by magic, now we have heat. I cheated and put some green coal on it. Originally, when I was doing this, it was summertime. Like I said, everything was nice and dry, and I used lump charcoal and some wood I picked up out from around the house. Wintertime, wet, yes, I'm cheating and using coal. You can see all that fire as the volatiles burn off the green coal. What you can't see is the inordinate amount of smoke that makes. It was not a pleasant experience not having a hood and a flue to pull that smoke away. And you'll have to excuse the sound of my dogs walking around in the background. But we're finally getting some heat on that steel. And we'll go over to the anvil and we'll keep working that point out. Drawing out a nice long taper. Turning it 90 degrees. Keeping that taper worked out. Working it square. Keeping it square. Back in the fire. Got to keep it square. I'm going to work that taper out till it's nice and fine. Yeah, now we're cooking with gas. We're almost where we want to be. Yep, that's looking good. But you can see how quick that little block of steel sucks the heat out of that round stock. It's cold outside. And out we go again. One more time on the taper. Knock the corners off. So we go from round to square, and then we knock the corners down and go to octagon. There we go. Nice octagon shape. And for something like this, I can go ahead and start rounding it up after we go to octagon. I guess you figured out I'm not making a knife. There's a reason for that. There we go. One more time with the corners. And we'll start rounding it off. Just turning the stock. Working it on the anvil, light blows. Taking out the hammer marks. Taking out the lines from where we finished it out to an octagon. Just going to round it up. I'm making a hook instead of a knife because every knife maker, everybody who's going to forge a blade should start with hooks. It teaches you hammer control. It teaches you how the steel behaves under the hammer. It teaches you how the steel looks in your various heat ranges. You learn so much just from this little simple project. Not to mention the fact that I said I was going back to the beginning. And this is the beginning. This is the first project that I forged. Now we're rounding over a little curlicue on the end, make it interesting. Keep it moving, keep it moving. If you ever hit it without moving it around, you're gonna make a flat spot and then it won't look worth anything. even it up, and back in the fire. These hooks are great practice. Make 200 hooks, then we may talk about making a knife. I went back to the beginning. This was the first project I ever made, and incidentally was the first project I ever sold. Hooks sell. Everybody needs hooks. Nail them to a board, make a coat rack. Nail them to a board, hang your hat. Quench off the very end there so we don't mess up our little curlicue, and just start rounding out over our improvised anvil horn. Working around, bend the hook. Don't let it get too cold. Almost there, a little more. A little more. There we go. Wow, that's a nice hook shape. Even it all up. Now I've got to decide how much shank I want on this hook. And I'll just use this cold chisel to mark it. Yeah, when I first started, I didn't even have a hacksaw. But I did have a cold chisel. Back in the fire and warm it up. It's getting there. Got to keep a close eye or it'll burn. Steel will burn. That's where the old saying, too many irons in the fire, comes from. Working multiple pieces and not paying attention and burn one up. Not that I've ever done that, of course. And we'll just take the old chisel out and cut it off. A few little taps with a hammer. And off it popped. Drop forged. Don't worry about the leaves catching on fire. Everything around here is so wet you couldn't set it on fire with gasoline. There's our hook. But we still need our, what I call the thumbprint on the shank of the hook, so you've got a place to make a hole and hang it. So it goes back in the fire. And you'll see me struggle a bit with those vice grips. They're just about worn out. But they're what I had when I started. And we're back at the beginning. There we go. Oh. Stupid vice grips. Struggle. Using half face blows on my improvised anvil to make that thumbprint. Just work it out flat. Yeah, we've almost got this done. One more heat. Now I won't bore you with the monotony of boring a hole in the thumbprint once it's done. That's easy enough with any hand drill. We'll just work it out a little bit flatter. Nice wide place for about a 3/16 hole. Most screws, nails will go through that just fine. There we go. And pretty much done. Well, that was interesting. It's been a long time since I went back to those hole in the ground, scrap of steel nailed to a stump. It's been a long time since I did that. And you got to watch me stumble and bumble through it just like I did the first time. But the main thing about that is, the main thing to take away from that experience is that I didn't need any special equipment. I had a hammer, some kind of pair of pliers, a hole in the ground, a stolen hairdryer, scrap wood, and a fire. And if I can do it, you can do it. Go dig a hole in the ground, steal your wife's hairdryer or your husband's hairdryer. Give it a shot. Hope you enjoyed the video. Bye for now.